Hey guys, it's Quickie Baby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a sneak peek for you from the Chinese server. You are looking at the Object 268 version 5. This is a tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer with a fully traversable turret, but the same awesome gun that you will be accustomed to on your tier 10 tank destroyers. Firstly, I'm going to give you a full rundown of the statistics of this vehicle so you can see how it stacks up to its tier 10 competition, and then follow it up with my first featured replay from the Chinese server, and boy, is it a cracker. So before I begin, let me explicitly state that this vehicle has not made an appearance outside of the Chinese server as of yet. And as you may or may not know, Wargaming doesn't actually specifically run World of Tanks on the Chinese server. It's actually operated by Kongzong, and they very frequently take vehicles that Wargaming are super testing or possibly keeping around to maybe put into the game in the future and release them for rather large amounts of money as premium or reward vehicles. So I'd like to be clear that everything I'm going to discuss is subject to change. These are most likely in no way the final statistics of this vehicle, but on the other hand, interestingly, this vehicle is actually in the North American and European client, which does suggest that Wargaming are either actively testing the vehicle, and to all intents and purposes, while this is certainly not going to happen, Wargaming could flick a switch and make this vehicle available right now. So here we have the Object 268 version 5 on the left, the standard tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer, the Object 268 that everyone will be familiar with, and the American turreted tier 10 tank destroyer, the T-110E4 on the right. So right off the bat, we notice that version 5 has got terrible DPM, less than 2,300. That is simply tragic for a tier 10 tank. It's even lower than the T-110E4. And that's because while all three of these vehicles have got 750 alpha damage, version 5 sacrifices over half a round a minute compared to its non-turreted standard counterpart. Fortunately, however, you do not sacrifice that monster penetration, 303mm with its standard rounds, and if you choose to fire heat, you have 395mm of penetration. And one thing that not a lot of people realize is that the high explosive rounds on these tier 10 tank destroyers are fantastic, with 90mm of penetration and 1100 alpha damage. Now onto the gun handling, and it's not really great news for the version 5. This vehicle has worse aim time than the 268 and worse aim time than the E4, although its accuracy is slightly better than the E4, but it is worse than the standard 268. The dispersion values are worse than the other two vehicles in this comparison, and the turret traverse dispersion is only slightly better than the E4's. Furthermore, just because this tank has a turret doesn't mean that it's going to have great gun depression. It's limited to 5 degrees, and that'll make it rather awkward. With regards to mobility, version 5 has the same top speed limit as the 268 at 48 kilometers an hour. That makes this vehicle rather nippy, and it can also go backwards at 15. That's fantastic compared to the T-110E4's abysmal 10 kilometers an hour reverse speed limit. In addition, the power to weight ratio of version 5 is not bad at 15. That's just shy of the 15.69 that the 268 has, but that's better than the T-110E4's 13.67 power to weight ratio. However, just look at the ground resistances that will almost completely negate this advantage. 1.8 on hard, 2 on medium, and 2.6 on soft means that this fairly decent power to weight ratio is just going to be hampered through terrible ground resistances, especially compared to the 268 and even the T-110E4 on hard and medium terrain. Furthermore, the turret traverse on this vehicle is 18 degrees a second. That is just like a super heavy vehicle and identical to the T-110E4. And as the track traverse on this vehicle is only 20 degrees a second, that means that you're going to be much slower in the turns than your non-turreted counterpart and even the T-110E4. So how about the armor on the version 5? Well, it's got 120mm of hull armor at the front and 90 at the side. And yep, literally 120 all across the front. That means that your effective armor ranges from about 180 up to 200. And if you're using the full extent of your gun depression on this vehicle and your opponent's aiming up at you, you might have about 250, which will be effective against, I guess, tier 8 and tier 9 opponents. Side armor wise though, this vehicle is quite disappointing. We can see all the way along the length of the lower half of the vehicle, it's 50mm, which means that the 152mm main armament that the 268 version 5 uses will be able to overmatch this area of the tank. Furthermore, while the turret is good in places ranging up to about 300 down to 240 in this location, it has an awful cupola on top just like the 268, which is easily penetrated by all vehicles that will meet it. And furthermore, the roof of this tank is 50mm here and a god-awful 30mm here. And so this means that all guns of 91mm and larger will be able to overmatch the roof of the Object 268 version 5. The vehicles here hit points is 1,900, nothing out of the ordinary there, but it does have a rather low view range of 360 meters, which means that you're probably going to be wanting to take binoculars on this tank, and that kind of defeats the point of a turret. I guess if you have an exceptionally skilled crew in coated optics, you can probably still get up to about the 445 meters mark while moving, and as this is a reward vehicle and you can move your Soviet crews into the tank, that kind of shouldn't be a problem. So now you know what this vehicle is all about, let's get stuck into some gameplay. So today, I'm able to give you a sneak peek of the Object 268 version 5 due to Elevensu, who uploaded this fantastic replay to the What Replays website. So Elevensu, thank you so much, really appreciate it. And I also like to say, if I do have any other Chinese viewers who do have these kind of rare tanks that are only available on that server, if you do have any fantastic games, feel free to give me a poke, because I'm always interested in featuring novel tanks to kind of give us plebs that play on the European, North American, Russian, and also on the Asia server a little bit of a look into the future. So Elevensu has pushed out here, and he spotted a Walker Bulldog, and he just hit him for 972. Was that the mother of all rolls? Oh no, Elevensu's got his high explosive rounds on his primary loadout, and they've got 1,100 average damage, so that was actually a low roll. I thought that was 750 rolling super high, whereas in actuality that Bulldog should count himself lucky that he didn't get killed in the first few seconds of this game. And that's when having turrets on tank destroyers is just absolutely awesome, because you can take those shots. If Elevensu had been in an Object 268, he would have been facing completely the wrong direction, unable to take those risky shots. And I guess the saying is that you miss all of the shots that you don't take, right? If you do have excess ammunition in your vehicle, a lot like the Object 268 version 5 does have, then you might as well take the shots, right? Talking about taking the shots, Elevensu just did, with the high explosive round, he's playing a bit like artillery here, guys. He did 384 damage and 180 damage to the T-55A. And I would think what that tank is. What the hell is that tank? It looks like it was a Scorpion on the enemy team. This is some kind of weird way of me to try and figure out what the vehicles actually are. Gosh, I had to download the Chinese client, all of it, to be able to feature this sneak peek, because these replays from the Chinese server didn't actually work on the European client. So hopefully you guys appreciate that. But it just means that I'm completely illiterate when it comes to the Chinese language. So I'm going to have to try and work out, gosh, names. What is that tank? That's probably an OHO, I should think. Some kind of OHO. I'm not even too sure. We'll have to see later on. I'm going to be judging vehicles based on their outlines and their hit points. One thing that I just noticed is, what is this at the top of the screen? What is it? Okay, I don't even know what it says. Is it some kind of advertisement? Have they just started selling some premium time at a discounted rate? Are they selling more crazy tier 10 Clan Wars reward tanks for astronomically high prices, even by a Western standard? But more on that later. So I guess with the Object 268 version 5, the funny thing about it is it's not a heavy tank. It doesn't really have the pure armor of a heavy tank. It's certainly not a medium, because it doesn't have the mobility of a medium due to its poor ground resistances and poor track traverse. It's not really a tank destroyer, so to say, because it doesn't really have the best kind of gun handling. Its rate of fire is rather low. So how do you use this tank? What is your best way to be able to play the Object 268 version 5 and to play vehicles like the T110E4? It's really to just try and always be somewhere where you're not going to have to should we say, be overpowered by an enemy tank that's very specific. Now, for example, don't fight a T110E3 in a close quarters situation. Don't go and after a Bat Chatillon. You might put 750 damage into him, but after that he's going to laugh at you as he surrounds your vehicle and puts 505mm shells through it, pretty much taking it out more times out of 10 in a single magazine. This vehicle, its mobility, is enough to get around though. That's one thing that's interesting about it. It's way faster than, should we say, the average tier 10 tank destroyer. And I guess it's only tanks like the Object 268, which I didn't really think was a fast vehicle until I took a look at it now. It's got a really nice power to weight ratio and good ground resistances. But of course, vehicles like the Grilla and also possibly the AMX 50 Foch 155. So there we go, the first heat round entering the vehicle. I guess that was the T-55A that he shot earlier. Yep, there's only one T-55A on the enemy team, so it must have been him. And it looks like he hit the cupola of the vehicle, or alternatively, just hit that big forehead. Now remember, I was mentioning that that forehead is only 30 millimeters thick. Wow, an AP round entering the Type 4 Heavy on the enemy team there, and the artillery finishing him off. Now up to 2,200 damage, but you know that's not too hard after you do 972 to a Bulldog while moving at about 40 kilometers an hour. Gosh, he needs to buy a lottery ticket for that shell. But it didn't roll high. If it rolled high, then maybe he should buy some lottery tickets. So now we've got some tank destroyed. There's the Scorpion, and that's the Scorpion that he splashed earlier with that T-55A. Now, both of those vehicles have been taken out. Actually, no, the T-55A is still around, so he's going to have to watch out for him. But having dealt with that Scorpion, just every tank counts. And I can immediately tell you that this is not a tank destroyer rate of fire, is it, guys? I thought the T-110E4 had bad DPM, and the fact that this vehicle has just as bad, if not a little worse, I can imagine this vehicle being incredibly frustrating when you just need to get the damage out. But then again, a tank like this is going to be able to get the damage out in more situations, albeit just not as quick. So I'm not sure if 11 Su is using coated optics on this vehicle, or if the fact that the aim time is at 3 seconds that he's decided to use a gun lane drive on this tank. Considering he's using a premium consumable here, he's using some combat rations, and I bet you he's also got a very skilled crew, considering he does have 2 marks of excellence on this vehicle, and it is a reward vehicle that he's probably put some of his Soviet tank destroyers in, well, his Soviet tank destroyer crews in, I should say. I can imagine that he's probably going for gun rammer, vents, and obviously the gun lane drive in this vehicle, because his view range doesn't seem to be all that high. And I think if he was using coated optics on 360 base view range with a decent crew and using a premium consumable and vents as well, that he would be starting to get up to that 445 meter spotting. So that's something to watch out for with this vehicle if it ever does come out of the Chinese server. I wonder what Wargaming will do with this. Do you think they're planning on making it a Clan Wars reward tank? Probably. That's what happened with the 121 for a little while. Whoa! Right through that Jagdtiger. Was it a Jagdtiger's hull armor there? I didn't even quite see. I think it was a tier 9 Jagdtiger that he just shut down there. For how much was it? 696 damage. Not too bad at all. That's picked up his second kill of the game. But there are still 6 tanks remaining. So it's him and a T10 against the world. And it looks like the Chinese server players here don't really want to be capping. That T-54 could have easily been able to cap out the base by now, but none of them are really entering the cap circle. And you know what? Punishing there. Looks like a heat round or an armor-piercing round does enter for 755 damage. And now 11 Su is loading another heat round. Now we're talking about 395 millimeters of penetration. Yup. Well, when you do shoot at that kind of an angle, it's still going to ricochet, right? That T-54 can thank his lucky stars. But does 11 Su have to watch out for self-propelled guns right now? If they have located up in this location that you see around here, then they're going to be able to get shots. But he can't worry about that now because a T-110E4 is making his way behind him. So he's got to get forwards. The artillery splashes out his remaining T-10. And he puts in a clutch shot into the T-54 there. And that was very chancy. To put it into perspective, if he'd missed that, the T-54 could have fired at least 2, if not probably 3 times before 11 Su would have reloaded. But he's in a rather nice situation now. He's got enough hit points to take a shot from this E4. Wow, 11 Su doesn't mess around here. He fires clutch right into the top of the T-110E4 and shuts down Morphine on the enemy team. Is Morphine one of the only players who has actually spelt his name using Roman numerals? It looks like that is the case. So now he's coming around the corner against a VK4502PA. What is that? What is a VK4502PA? I'm actually rather interested right now. Should we take a gander at this vehicle? There's obviously the tier 8 German heavy tank. It looks exactly the same, but I wonder why it would have a P in the name. I guess that's maybe just the way that they've translated the vehicles. When you think about it, it's the VK4502P and the VK4502A and the B, right? So I guess that's just how it makes sense. So now, having put in 777, he's won the slots, puts another round into the top of the turret for 709, and there's nothing really that VK could do against him. And even if the rate of fire on this vehicle is as bad as it could be, it doesn't matter all that much if you do control the engagement like that. Now, artillery jams a shell into the back of 11 Su's tank, but that doesn't really matter because he uses his repair kit, he uses his med kit, and puts 859 damage into the VK 10001P. That looks like it's the VK 10,001P. The dot has not made it across here. And another heat round. This time it misses. Now he's reloading high explosive. You know what? That's not too bad of an idea. When you do have 1,100 average damage and 90 millimeters of penetration, then even a splash along the side of that vehicle should be sufficient. And I like what 11 Su is doing here with his side scraping. He's just hoping that the VK does put a round into the side armor of this tank, and it is exceptionally well angled, which means along here that you are going to be ricocheting. But of course, you also have to watch out for the side armor of this vehicle. As I did mention, only 50 millimeters thick. At least on Tanks GG, that is not very good. And just look how slow this vehicle, how cumbersome it is when it is turning. So he's going to poke out, shut down the Batchat 155-55, and now he's turned his 1 versus 5 situation into a 1 versus 1. And on 820 hit points, surely this Su-14-2 doesn't stand a chance. But will he cap? If I was the Su-14-2, I'd be capping, but oh no, he's waiting around the corner, trying to get the ambush, and kablam. Good job, 8 kills, 8,000 damage. What a round of World of Tanks. And just before we take a look at the post-game stats, please, 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 somebody put me out of my bemusement. What are these messages at the top of the screen? What do they mean and what are they indicating? So 11 Su picks up the one that everybody wants, the Kolobanos medal for standing alone against at least 5 opponents, in addition to the Radley Walters for his 8 kills and nearly 9,000 damage. What a game. That nails him to high caliber, and his shutting down of the enemy's self-propelled guns there also means he picks up Pescucci's medal. And so while I've personally never played the Object 268 version 5, 11 Su says that he doesn't think that this is a good tank destroyer, it sucks, and that he just had a very lucky game. Well, 11 Su, I think you're far too humble. While this vehicle doesn't exactly look like it's statistically the strongest vehicle, your excellent play was more the reason for this replay than luck alone. And I just went digging around on the Chinese website, and I found out that you can just buy one of these tanks, but it looks like it costs $165. And to show you just how crazy this gift shop is, if you want the Object 907, which is arguably the best medium tank in the game, that's $100. In fact, all of the Clan Wars reward tanks can be purchased, and even some tanks that I have no idea what they are. So Kong Zong arguably taking pay to win to a whole new level on the Chinese server. And I'd like to reiterate that if any Chinese players out there have got exceptional replays of exceptionally rare tanks, please do give me a poke. And 11 Su, thank you so much for uploading this on What Replays so that we could all get a sneak peek of what possibly we might look forward to seeing in the future. And hopefully all of you enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful to you. If it was, please consider giving it a like. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments what you think about the Object 268 version 5. Does this look like a balanced tank? And how do you think Wargaming will use this vehicle outside of China in the future? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.